Hello, I am Anvesha, and welcome to the fourth episode of this five-part livestream series where we focus on the Wolfram High School Summer Camp experience. In today's live stream, we're going to talk about girls in STEM. We are joined by Wolfram 2020 camp alumni, Naomi, Juliana, Anya, and Supriya. So let's just get started with the introductions. I'm Anvesha Das, and I'm a high school senior from Kanpur in India. I attended the Wolfram High School Summer Camp in person in 2019. And following that, I was a part of the Wolfram Emerging Leaders Program in 2019, and I'm currently a Wolfram Student Ambassador. Why don't we all go around and introduce ourselves? Supriya, do you want to start off?
Sure. So, hi, my name is Supriya. I am a sophomore and in high school, and I attended Wolfram Summer Camp this past year in 2020, and I'm also part of the WELP program.
Awesome. Naomi.
Hello, my name is Noemi. I am a high school senior in Northern California. I attended the Wolfram Summer Camp this past summer, and I'm part of the WELP program now.
Great. Juviana?
Hello, I'm a high school junior from Southern California. I participated in the Wolfram Summer Camp 2020, and I'm currently in the Wolfram Emerging Leaders Program.
Awesome. And finally, Anya.
Hi, I'm Anya. I'm a high school senior from New York. I participated in the Wolfram Summer Camp this past summer, and I'm also part of the WELP program.
Great. Let's get started with today's live stream. So I thought initially we could just talk about the virtual camp experience this year. So maybe all of you guys could go around and talk about your favorite thing from this year's camp and just introduce your projects and maybe briefly describe what you did in your projects. Let's start with Supriya.
Yeah, so I had a lovely camp experience this past year. I thought it was a really enriching experience, and I think one of my favorite parts was probably the just working with my mentor on my project, and also kind of having those virtual kind of lectures. I found those to be really beneficial to kind of helping me understand the different applications of the Wolfram language. And I'd say that, well, okay, so my project pertained to billiard balls and kind of a geometrical application. And so, yeah, I was able to kind of do some research on ergodicity and also uniformity in polygonal billiard balls. So, yeah, I had a really great camp experience overall, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone interested.
That sounds great. Let's have Naomi next. Can you just clarify the pronunciation once? I'm pretty sure I'm getting it wrong.
Noemi.
Noemi. Yeah, we got this. Okay, let's have Noemi next.
So my camp experience was definitely interesting. I had basically no code experience going in, which sounds strange because I don't think that was most people's experience. I had like beginner's Python under my belt, and that was it. So I was a bit confused going into the program. A lot of times I didn't know what was going on the first few days, but at some point I realized like, okay, this is the state I'm in. I just need to deal with this and I can go forward. So I learned ridiculously quickly. I stayed up really late at nights and I learned the Wolfram language pretty quickly. Now I have a good amount of code under my belt now. I'm definitely happy that I decided to work through it. My favorite parts of the Wolfram Summer Camp were definitely that, like persevering, getting through it, and learning all of the Wolfram language because it's such a cool language. My project was about natural language volatility. So I looked at different languages and I tried to create a code that would decide which ones change more often than others. I was also interested in finding out why that might be the case, but I did not get to that part. Another thing I really liked about the camp, like Supriya mentioned, when they showed us all the different things you could do with Wolfram, one of the example projects was of gerrymandering, and I thought that was really interesting, that you could apply code to a political lens like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed that, for sure.
That's great. It seems like you had a really wholesome experience. I have been talking to a lot of students from your batch, and it seems like gerrymandering was definitely one of the most popular classes on there. Also, about being new to coding, I was new to coding when I went to the camp too. So you're not alone. And definitely the learning curve is remarkable. Yeah, let's have Juviana next.
Yeah, so Supriya and Noemi have mentioned some really great experiences. Those were some of my favorite experiences as well. I liked being able to have a mentor and work with a mentor and work in a group of other people working on cool projects. It's really satisfying to start a project and then work on it, and you have this this result at the end. That was a new experience for me, working on a project and having a mentor to help me with that kind of project, which was great. It was a very supportive environment, both with the mentor and the other people in the group. And my project was about tessellating images into wallpaper groups. So um, there are these in math, we have plane symmetry groups, and basically you can take an image and make it different wallpaper-like patterns by applying these mathematical transformations. So I was working on that. It was an interesting math and art intersection.
That sounds awesome. Finally, let's have Anya.
Yeah, so I agree with what Juliana said. A lot of people mentioned like the mentor group experience. I really like that. But I think another part of camp for me was kind of delving into physics. I didn't really expect to do so much with physics in the camp as I did. My school doesn't really offer anything beyond like an introductory level physics course. But then the project I took on was simulating a satellite collision, which inherently involves physics. And I didn't really know how to approach it, and my mentor was really helpful with that. And then also, I found Stephen Wolfram when he talked about his like Wolfram physics project. I thought that was really interesting, and overall, like the exposure to all that he was doing was. I mean, I didn't understand most of it, but I thought it was really cool. So yeah, I thought that was also a very great part of the experience.
That sounds great. Yeah, I think with that, we'll move into the main agenda of today's live stream is we're going to talk about girls in STEM. We're personally going to talk about our experiences and any projects we might be doing, the positive and the negative experiences. So let's just get started with how we got involved in STEM. Probably you could also talk about your computer science experience or how you were introduced to coding. Let's go in the other order this time. Let's start with Anya.
Okay. I mean, I've been pretty into STEM ever since middle school. My parents they work in some fields, so I've kind of been involved in it from an early age. But in terms of computer science, I actually go to an all girls high school. So I've kind of had an interesting like perspective, I think, on the computer science in terms of how like girls get into it, because my school requires it for freshmen to take it. And a lot of times I'll see that girls will take it and then they'll be like, oh, that was hard. It's not for me. And then like we offer other computer science courses in my high school throughout the years of high school. And then they'll end up taking it like again junior year because they're like, oh, like I'll try it again. And then they end up loving it. And I've known some people who do that. And then now they're thinking of going into computer science careers. So I think I've had a very positive experience with computer science through my high school and learning just we do some basic HTML and like JavaScript. But yeah, I've had a pretty positive experience.
That sounds awesome, especially the part that you go to an all-girls high school, so you have a very different perspective and you probably see it firsthand, which is really nice to know. Let's have Juliana next.
So how I got interested in STEM? Okay,
Yeah.
so well, I've been interested in STEM for a while. When I was a small child, I went to the library and I saw this book about robots. And I was reading about all these different robots that people had made. And I found that super interesting. And just over time, my interest in computer science grew. However, there weren't that many I sort of, my family and I sort of had to find opportunities. They weren't just readily available. So my school didn't have any computers. My high school didn't have any computer science classes until a few years ago, and even then, it's not. It's taught by the choir director, and which is good, but there's sort of a lack of computing opportunities. Um, but some experiences I've had, um, in science, I have participated in science fairs, which is great because you do see a lot of girls participate in science fairs. They have a lot of good scientific research. But what you don't see as many girls in computer science. I was on a Lego robotics team in elementary school, and I was always the only girl on the team, and that's not really a great experience. We don't. Um, so, but over time, I've had some more experiences that are more balanced. Like the Wolfram Summer Camp has a lot of girls who are doing great things. Some of them are on this panel, and that's a um, great experience, encouraging environment. And I can talk about an organization that's helping with this problem, but I think I'll talk about that later.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that one later. I definitely relate with the part about not having competing opportunities in the school. So my school doesn't offer computer science until junior year, and by that time, people already are kind of like, I'm out of this. So yeah, that's definitely relatable. Let's have Noemi next.
Yeah, so for me, I've been interested in STEM since I was a really, really little kid. I always really, really liked math. I also was really interested in animals when I was a little kid. I wanted to be a biologist, so I definitely always liked that. When I got older, I realized, oh, I like math more than I like biology for sure. And I joined the mathletes team when I was in middle school. I had a similar experience to Juviana where I was the only girl on the team. But my middle school teacher who ran the mathletes team definitely inspired me to keep pursuing math. If it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't be as far as I am right now. There were definitely a lot of discouraging factors, people telling me that I shouldn't go into STEM, that I wouldn't be good at it, that I should just be an artist instead, that type of thing. I don't know if that was specifically related to me being female, but that was definitely the case for me. In my high school, there are not a lot of STEM opportunities, unfortunately, but I am working to change that. I have a link crew class where we are working on doing school improvements, and the project I'm specifically working on is looking at trying to make STEM more accessible for people in my community. I will talk more in depth about that later. But yeah, in general, I've had a mixed experience with STEM, but I absolutely love it, and I will do anything to keep going on in STEM.
That's amazing to hear. Yes, we will touch upon both the negative and positive sides of being a female in STEM later on. But yeah, for now, let's hear about Supriya's experience with STEM.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to kind of be introduced to STEM from a very young age. And that kind of was provided to me through watching documentaries, going to museums, that kind of thing. And so because I was kind of lucky enough to have those opportunities at a young age, which my parents kind of definitely had to search for a little bit more, I'd say, kind of like Juliana mentioned. I would say that I found a really deep passion for all STEM fields, particularly math and engineering. And so over the years, I've had many opportunities for STEM experiences, and I've, participated in lots of different clubs and also just camps and competitions as well. I also participate in science fair. I have for the past 5 years. So it's really kind of those kinds of experiences really give you a larger perspective into kind of what STEM really is as a career. And so I think kind of being provided those opportunities really gave me the encouragement to kind of go forward and pursue STEM as a possible career. And I think there are many positives and negatives to kind of being a female in STEM, and I think those are kind of pronounced, I guess, through these different opportunities. I mean, one example is in my engineering class a few years ago. I was one out of 3 girls in a class of 30 students. So it's definitely not a super diverse or kind of balanced community yet, but I think I'm really elated to kind of see more diversity through the Wolfram High School summer program, and also just in other various opportunities as well, including my math class this year, which has been really great.
Great, it's great to hear about your math class, because I'm pretty sure all of us have been in that situation where we're sort of the only few girls in a class, or similar situations or competitions. So yeah, talk on those lines. What are some of your most positive experiences with STEM? So maybe you guys could also talk about any exciting projects or teams related to STEM that you've been a part of recently. Let's start with Supriya. Let's go. Yeah, we'll just go clockwise and anti-clockwise.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I've been participating in my regional and state science fairs for the past 5 years. And so that's really given me kind of a kind of stepping stone to really explore research specifically. So in the past, I've done a lot of different mathematical modeling projects, some with epidemics, some with networking, and some with astronomy related and aerospace projects as well. And so I did one project modeling Zika and another modeling the Spanish flu. So I've also used Mathematica for a few of those projects, as well as I've kind of explored that more recently, which has been wonderful. So yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of different opportunities and experiences to be withheld from all of these different fields. And I think specifically in computer science, there are kind of a large range of applications that can kind of be taken in any direction. And I think I've had a really great experience exploring those.
That's great to hear. Noemi.
Yeah, so recently I've been doing a lot actually. Over the summer, I was part of the Wolfram Summer Camp. I TA'd for the Stanford Logic Institute, which I had participated in a few years prior, and I was in the Stanford Compression Forum as well. In the Compression Forum, that was a 6-week-long project. I already told you guys about the Wolfram, what I did during the Wolfram camp, so I'll skip over that. But during the Compression Forum, I worked on looking at tweets on Twitter surrounding coronavirus to understand how sentiment around masks and other protective measures might be related to case rate. We found some interesting results from that. It was a lot of fun. It definitely made me realize that I'm really interested in research, and that's what I want to go forward in. I want to get my PhD when I'm through with college and focus on research at a university level. Apart from that, I'm working on my WELP project right now, which I don't know if we're supposed to be talking about that, but I'm really excited about it. The gerrymandering project inspired me to go through with something political based. So we're looking at modeling political situations to try to understand how idea groupings happen.
That's awesome to hear, especially a project from the Compression Forum. That's really interesting. I actually worked over something very similar. So I was working with tweets and emojis and like studying how COVID affects them, but that's really interesting to hear. Yeah, let's have Juviana next.
So I've had some great experiences with research. Like I mentioned earlier, I've participated in some science fairs in years past, and I've done some bioinformatics projects looking at pancreatic cancer and opioid addiction. So the thing something great about research is that it teaches you how to think, but at the same time, you are making some findings that could potentially help people. And that's just been a great experience for me that I've really enjoyed doing bioinformatics research. And then lately, I've been working on a WELP project. We're dealing with language, figurative language specifically, and I won't go into too much detail on that right now, but eventually you'll see a community post on the Wolfram community, so stay tuned.
Great to hear that. Let's have Anya next.
I think one of the most positive experiences I've had in STEM, in high school specifically, has been my school's rocketry team. It started my freshman year, so everyone was kind of new to it. I think the girl who started it had done it in middle school, so she was more experienced. But generally, like, we didn't really know what we were doing, and we kind of just they're cardboard rockets with 3D printed parts, and they're propelled by gunpowder. So we kind of just it was really fun initially. Like, we were just kind of figuring out how to launch these rockets and get them at a certain height. And get them to land in a certain time frame. And it was kind of just fun, I guess, experimenting with it, since a lot of us had literally no clue what was going on. And then, like, through the years, I was on the same team for the past few years. So it was interesting to see how, like, I was initially the only freshman on the team, and everyone else on my team was a sophomore. So it was interesting to see how, like, we bonded over it, and we all gradually gained more experience in it. And a lot of us ended up wanting to pursue STEM careers. And I think that experience really augmented it, because it was fun. You learn all this stuff in the classroom, but it's fun to, like, go out and, like, launch a rocket every now and then, Yeah.
That's really exciting to hear. Yeah, I'm glad you're doing great with that. Let's now move on to the more grim side of things. So maybe we could just talk about our negative experiences about being a female in STEM. We'll start with Anya.
Fortunately, I haven't had, like, a directly negative experience, I guess. I did this internship at a local university at their nano satellite lab. And it was a really inclusive environment, and I really enjoyed it. But most of the people there, it's run by college students, so most of them are men. And it's kind of, I guess, discouraging to see that it's such an inclusive environment. And I'm a high school intern, and they're still really nice to me, and like, they get me engaged in what they're doing. But there are very few women involved in the program. So I guess I just found that kind of discouraging. And I guess it just shows that in my community, there's still a lot of issues with giving women the opportunity to pursue engineering. Yeah.
I think often a lot of us are fortunate enough to not have any, like, blatantly negative experiences, but it's just that the ratio is often very discouraging in general. So yeah, we will have Juviana next.
Yeah, I agree about the ratio being discouraging, and it kind of makes you, well, at least me, a little bit uncomfortable just to be there. So I don't have a particular event to describe here, but I can talk about in my experience as a girl doing things where everyone else is a boy or a man. It's like sometimes I feel like I have to prove my own abilities, and it doesn't matter whether how my abilities really are compared to everyone else's. It's just people probably expect less of me, expect that I have a low interest in STEM or low abilities, and it just doesn't feel good to have to worry about proving yourself. What you want when you're doing STEM is the ability to just, well, enjoy what you're doing and learn and not be afraid to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. So I think what ends up happening when even when all the guys who are there are trying, even if they respect you and are being nice, there are sort of have an unconscious bias, which makes the atmosphere tense and uncomfortable, distracting.
Yeah, that's very true. Noemi?
Yeah, so what Juviana said definitely reminded me of something that like every time I walk into like a STEM environment, I kind of feel the need to like prove myself. So within the first few minutes of any given situation, I'm gonna try to be like the loudest person. So everyone's first impression is that like, oh well, she actually knows what she's talking about. And I understand how there are so many of my female friends who have told me like, oh well, I don't have a math brain, or I can't do that. Like it's discouraging to feel like you have to prove yourself automatically every time you're in a situation. And like Juliana was saying, most of the time, like most men are like really nice to you, that they're not sexist or anything, but there's definitely like the unconscious feeling of being like, oh, okay, well, she's just here because she's a girl or that type of thing. And I don't think it's just for men. I think sometimes girls can unconsciously think that too, unless you like face it and you're like, oh, okay, this is what I'm thinking underneath like my feelings, and I'm just not addressing it. You need to consciously say like, this is what I am doing to myself for you to actually notice it and get past it, which is a shame. Like it's very frustrating. And it's also annoying how you guys kept mentioning like being the minority. I was thinking about it and I was like, wow, I really am the like women really are the minority in most of the STEM environments I'm in, but I didn't even realize until you guys had brought it up, because you just get so used to it. Like it doesn't make a difference, you know? In my school has one big STEM program, which is called the Physics Academy, which is a really big deal for my school because we're a low income school and we don't have that many resources. And the Physics Academy, when I was in it, had 7 girls in it. And out of those 7, 3 of them left. 3 of them left the program. So that's almost half of them. And how many boys left? I think there was 1. So it's definitely not the best environment. For me, I've definitely faced some adversity in terms of pursuing STEM. I don't know if it's directly related to me being a girl, but I've had like science teachers. I had a science teacher pursue me once and be like, oh no, even though I had made it really clear to her that I was really interested in pursuing STEM, she was like, oh no, you shouldn't do that. You should be an illustrator for books. You shouldn't do that. And it was super discouraging to me. And I had a science teacher laugh at me when I told him I wanted to go to a STEM college. And experiences like that. It's good to just be strong through them and be like, no, this is what I want to do. Thank you for your opinion, though. But it's definitely a different environment. I understand why a lot of girls quit STEM, and I really hope that can change, because it's so important that there are more of us in STEM. Like hearing all different types of perspectives, I think, is important in any field, but especially STEM, because what we do is so important. And I think this is like the STEM era here in the 21st century. So having all people of different kinds having their input is more important than ever. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry for talking so long.
No, it was really well put. I'm really sorry to hear about your teachers. Like, obviously not all of them, but the ones who commented like that. But yeah, we'll move on to Supriya now.
Yeah, so I've been fortunate to have more positive experiences than negative. I'd say there have been a few experiences in the past that I haven't had wonderful experiences with, and I mean there aren't any specific events necessarily where that was an issue, but I'd say there are definitely times when I feel discouraged because of the ratios, or just because of that feeling to need to prove myself constantly in those kinds of environments. And I think that can often be exhausting and draining, and I see kind of why girls who don't have as much experience, or constantly feel the need to prove themselves might feel discouraged and want to quit. And so I think it's important to kind of realize throughout that you're there to learn, and you're really passionate about these topics. And I think that's kind of what keeps you going and drives you through all of the negative experiences. I'd say one experience I encountered was at a cybersecurity workshop that I attended 2 summers ago. And I'd say that the ratios were not as balanced as we all would have liked them to be. And it was honestly, in some ways, a pretty discouraging experience, because I felt the need to kind of have to constantly prove myself and show that I was capable of doing the projects that we were working on. But I'd say overall, I'm really kind of happy to see that girls in STEM are kind of persevering and kind of making it through. And I've seen a really large difference in the amount of girls in my math class, and that really makes me happy to kind of see that girls are kind of fighting through and pushing the boundaries there a little bit more, and that we can kind of create that balance and have a really supportive community as well.
Awesome. Thank you for concluding that. So I think, to summarize, all of us kind of agreed that the ratio is the most discouraging part. I just remembered one experience that I wanted to kind of talk about that. So I actually do competitive mathematics, and I remember walking into this so I was like the mathematical Olympiad series. So the first level kind of had a very healthy ratio, and then the second level, which I think is equivalent to AIME, there were 500 people and there were 8 girls. And it was like a big hall, and just like, for the first time, I felt very aware of being female. So that was a very eye-opening experience, because I'm from a developing country. I'm from India. So I sort of already was used to having a pretty skewed gender ratio. Like, my STEM class has 4 girls and 36 guys, and I'm sort of used to it. But that was just an insane ratio. And it was a different experience, which kind of leads me to my next point. So all of us agreed that there is a gender gap in STEM. And this might be a question that probably doesn't have a direct answer, but let's just try and tackle it anyway. Why do you think there's a gender gap in STEM? Let's start with Cypria.
Yeah, so I was actually discussing this with a few other girls from my math class about why there kind of might be a gender gap, and specifically we also take data systems. So it was there's definitely less girls in our classes, and so I think we all kind of realize that, even though that kind of disbalance has become the norm for us. I think in some ways, I think girls can kind of be described more, or not described necessarily, but kind of assumed to be a more compassionate sex. And so I think in terms of how people perceive STEM fields, on the surface, it's not necessarily a sort of compassionate sort of field, I guess. Even though underlying that, there's definitely a lot of opportunity to kind of really it's not necessarily completely objective, which I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize. I think I was also lucky enough to kind of be introduced to STEM at a young age. I think a lot of girls don't necessarily have that opportunity, and I think because of that, when they find their passion for STEM and try to get into it, they might feel really discouraged because they feel like they lack experience, and it's not easy to persevere and kind of make it through that when you see your peers around you having been in that field for a long time and have a lot of experience there. And so I think for a lot of girls that can be really discouraging. I also read a paper a few weeks ago about how even when girls enter the STEM fields, how a lot of them drop out. And so that article suggested kind of specifically at the PhD level, a lot of women kind of feel the societal construct of needing to support a family as well. And so I think as we go into STEM fields, our main focus is kind of just pursuing that career, and we kind of push that off to the side a little bit, or at least some of us do, I think. And so as kind of fertility decreases, as this paper was describing, it kind of becomes more apparent to kind of create a family. And I think that's kind of because of our societal norms. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of societal constructs that kind of partake and kind of encourage girls from not pursuing a STEM career.
Thank you for sharing your viewpoint. I think you made really good points there. Let's hear Naomi's take on this.
I think for me, I say it's definitely mostly societal. And part of the reason I say that is just thinking about my mom and my grandmother's experience. And I know that's unrelated to me, but I'll go over it quickly. So my grandma wanted to go into economics when she was going through school. And that side of my family is from the US, and they live in like southern US, which is particularly known for being a little bit more sexist. And my grandmother experienced a lot of issues while she was trying to go in economics. She had professors tell her that she should just quit because all she's going to be is a secretary. Once she was actually in the workplace, she would confront her boss about her underlings making more money than her. And I think her boss told her, well, honey, you have a husband to take care of you. They have wives to take care of. And experiences like that. And eventually she just left and decided to become a teacher instead because of how bad it was. But even when she was in that environment, it was ridiculously sexist. My mom, on the other hand, never actually made it to try to pursue, well, I mean, I don't know if economics is really STEM, but it's closer than teaching. My mom, on the other hand, never really made it to that point. In high school, she got like a lot of backlash from like, oh, well, you shouldn't be interested in STEM, it's not for girls. So she ended up becoming a writer, but now that she's a lot older, she has had like a lot more exposure to science and that kind of thing. And she's like, well, if I had been a coder, I would have loved that because that completely fits my personality. But even though she was in a coding class in high school, it was like kind of enforced on her that's not for women. Like you shouldn't do that. And yeah, and I also think that, like Sapri was mentioning, it's kind of a hostile environment, at least starting out. It's not easy to go into STEM. It's definitely a lot of hard work. And I think that's for both men and women. It's just that women are more, I feel that women are more like attuned to like, it's hard, so I shouldn't be doing it, I guess, type of thing. Because yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a lot of societal context that makes women feel like they shouldn't be there, that they're not good enough, type of thing. And also what I was mentioning earlier with like always feeling like you have to prove yourself, and that's not something that everyone wants to do, regardless of your gender. People should not feel like they're obligated to stand out in every environment, and a lot of times that's how it feels for women in STEM, where it feels like, oh, well, you have to stand out. You have to stand out. Otherwise, no one's going to respect you. So yeah, that's what I think. I think it's largely societal, where it's just you don't belong here type thing. And a lot of women quit because of that. But most of my experiences have been good. So I think it's getting there. We're getting to a much better place than we were even just 10 years ago. So yeah.
Definitely. I tend to agree with you that the primary reason could be like societal pressure or construct. Also about, I think we all discussed about how there's always that need, like, or that feeling that we need to prove ourselves. I was reading a paper that often women tend to communicate in like a leadership position. They tend to pose their facts more as questions rather than just being assertive and be like, hey, this is like this. Just to be polite, it's often like they phrase it as a question, and that sort of creates a gap in how we communicate and establish our assertiveness or leadership, if you want to put it like that. Yeah, let's hear it from Juviana next.
So everyone so far has made really great points, and I might be echoing some of them, but I'd like to pose a question. Was Archimedes interested in SpaceX? Well, of course not. Archimedes wasn't interested in SpaceX because SpaceX didn't exist. He had no exposure to SpaceX so many years ago in ancient Greece. Would Archimedes be interested in SpaceX if he were alive today? I think it's likely. I don't know. I haven't talked to Archimedes. The point I'm making is that people won't be interested in things that they have no exposure to at all. And we talk about, oh, girls aren't interested in STEM. That doesn't mean they wouldn't be interested in STEM. It's that they don't have the access or the experience. And why is that? Well, often our society assumes that girls won't be interested in STEM, so better not target STEM opportunities towards them, target them toward the boys who would be interested in STEM. But how are girls supposed to know whether or not they're interested in STEM if they have no exposure? You're creating this loop here. Girls aren't interested in STEM, therefore don't give them opportunities. You don't give them opportunities, therefore they aren't interested in STEM. So I think that's one of the problems contributing to the gender gap. Cultural assumptions about what girls should and should not be interested in when it comes to STEM. I actually have a friend who's a girl who, when she was younger, she wanted to try some Lego robotics. But her mom wouldn't let her, telling her that it was something for boys. And she was genuinely interested, but was shut down. So women, not everyone really wants to put up with all of the societal pressure, and well, why should they? If something is causing you stress every day, why should we expect people to want to do it? What we need to do is create a positive culture so that anyone who is interested in STEM feels comfortable in their own skin. It's okay for them to be interested in STEM, and they don't ever have to prove themselves more than anyone else. So yeah, women face a lot of scrutiny when it comes to what we're expected to do, and yeah, I think that's an important thing. Just opportunities in that harmful loop that gets created.
Supriya, I think you want to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, can I just add one thing real quick?
Of course.
Yeah, so I think it's not necessarily just women in STEM. I think it's all minorities in general, and I think kind of these kind of condescending comments and discouraging events that happen don't necessarily pertain to just women in STEM. And I think we also kind of need to focus on the other minorities that are also underrepresented in the STEM communities. But I think kind of pushing for a more balanced community and more diversity in STEM, whether that be through clubs and things that encourage more female activity in these fields. I think that's kind of our first step going forward, kind of just making sure that all minorities here are represented. And if we can kind of push the boundaries to kind of encourage more diversity in a more balanced and supportive community, I think that's how we kind of have to go from where we are already.
May I comment on that? I
Of
agree with
course.
you. I agree with you, Supriya. And yeah, I'm part of a racial minority as well. I'm Black, and I've gone to the California State um, Science and Engineering Fair, which is great. But I've noticed, so at the California State Fair is very is huge. You have hundreds and hundreds of students from across the state coming to present their science fair projects. And guess how many Black students I think I spotted? Only about four. Four out of hundreds and hundreds. And that's just so yes, there is a big problem, not just with women in STEM, but also there are a lot of underrepresented minorities, and we need to make STEM opportunities accessible for them so that they can find their interest and have support in pursuing their goals and interests.
Definitely. Thank you, Supriya and Juliana. You guys make really good points. We needed that. Finally, for this question, we'll wrap up with Anya.
I think what Juliana was saying about, especially with like having support in pursuing your interests, I think that's really important. Because as we were talking about, like this need to prove yourself, I think it is very discouraging for all racial minorities when you feel this need to prove yourself. And what's even more discouraging is that there's this kind of like stigma around asking for help. Like if you're struggling, you feel like, oh, I can't do anything. I'm just not good at this. I should just not do it. And I think I mean, I still see it in my high school. I think my high school is a pretty supportive environment, but I still see girls who like they'll take a harder math class or something, and they're like, oh, I'm not good at it. Like I don't feel comfortable asking for help. I'm just going to drop the class. And but on kind of the opposite side of that, I've seen people take a class where they're struggling and then they ask for help, and then they end up like it's a very good experience for them, and they end up taking more classes like that in the future. So I think a lot of it obviously is societal issues and stuff like that, but especially there's a need to create this kind of supportive environment where even we should increase the diversity, obviously, and fix the unbalanced ratio. But then we need to sustain this environment by like getting rid of the stigma around asking for help. And like, it's okay to struggle. Everyone struggles, but you just need to push through it kind of, yeah.
Definitely. I think the points that Anya mentioned kind of leads us on to our next question, which is what do you think can be done to create a more inclusive environment? More specifically, talking about, say, encouraging more girls in STEM, or as like we talk, probably minorities. Let's start with Supriya.
Yeah, so I think definitely creating a more supportive community is really necessary to, like Anya said, kind of sustain a balanced environment. And I think, like she said, there is a large stigma around asking for help, and kind of also I'd say in many ways at the I guess less professional levels, there's also kind of a hindrance towards collaboration as well. I'd say a little bit. It's kind of more, fight for yourself, and it's kind of more of an independent trajectory when you start off. And I think kind of that environment doesn't necessarily encourage individuals, whether they be minorities or not, to kind of really persevere through those hardships. And I think that can really contribute to the mental health of an individual as well, and kind of whether or not they want to pursue that career. And I think even if someone does have the passion to pursue a career in STEM, whether they be a minority or not, I think it can kind of be discouraging when there isn't necessarily a super supportive environment that's open to talking about struggles, and talking about different problems that we're having in our research or in our lives, and kind of just really kind of making sure that we have a supportive community to support everyone, kind of would really, I think, help push the boundaries there, and also kind of sustain that diversity and balance.
Definitely. Let's hear from Noemi.
So for me, this is a really interesting topic because I go to a low-income school that's majority Latinx. I myself am not, but that is the community I'm surrounded with. And ever since I've been a freshman, I've noticed just how much inequity there is. From my first geometry honors class when I was a freshman, there were like 3 or 4 Latinx people in the class, and all of them were upperclassmen. That's not good. That's pretty self-explanatory. So I've seen issues from then on. I've spent so much time talking to teachers, interviewing people, trying to understand why. And I think by now I have a good understanding of why it happens. Is essentially it starts in middle school, because in my community specifically, we have the canal, which is majority Latinx people, and then we have everywhere else, which are like suburban residential homes that cost more money, which are mostly white people. So in the elementary schools, you have Latinx schools that are 99% Latinx people, and then white schools that are like 95% white, and then 5% everyone else. And the Latinx schools have like 20% math proficiency rates in elementary school, which is ridiculous because they're learning at 5th grade like fractions. Like that's what the California standard is. Sorry, this makes me angry. So in my Link Crew class, which is essentially like a school improvement class, me and my group have started a after-school organization where we're going to go to these schools with low proficiency rates and try to help them do better in math, and most importantly, try to get rid of something that we call math anxiety, which is a actual term which refers to when someone develops an actual anxiety of math, maybe due to bad school experiences, that type of thing. But I think anyone who has a lot of friends who aren't in STEM knows that math anxiety is a real and scary thing. I have so many friends that are just like, oh no, I can never do this thing that I want to do because I'll have to do math, and math is so hard, or math is so scary. Thank you to whoever commented about my cat. But it's a serious problem. So that's a program that I'm working on. But I think it's really important to just look at schools a lot, because early education is ridiculously important. I think that this wouldn't be nearly as like big of a problem if schools were more integrated. And I know that it's very controversial, but I'm going to be honest, most of the funding goes to the elementary schools that are majority white. That's just the way it is. And it's really unfair in so many ways, and it leads to so much like discrimination and lack of equity in STEM. I have like 2 friends who are Latinx who want to go into computer science, and like a lot more who are white, and most of my friends are Latinx because I go to a Latinx school. Like it's just frustrating, and I think people don't want to talk about the problems because they're worried that if schools are more integrated, then it will be at the cost of their kids, which is just not the case. Like there's not really any evidence that integrating schools will make the education quality worse. If anything, I think it'll just bring more attention to the problems that already exist. And this is talking specifically about the US. Other countries have different systems in place, and I think a lot of countries honestly have the education system more under control. But in the US, there's like a lot of work we can do just at the elementary school level that will improve equity significantly. So yeah, that's my 2 cents. I'm sorry for ranting about that.
Oh no, it's completely all right. Thank you so much for talking about it. And your initiatives really sound great. I'm so glad we got to talk about it on this platform. I wish we could talk about it more, but we kind of need to move on. So I'll have Juliana go next.
So I have a few points, so I'll try not to ramble. One thing I think that can be good to fight the gender gap in STEM is to talk about our biases openly so that we understand them. And let's be clear, both men and women can have biases against women in STEM. It's true. So what we want to see, so if you're a teacher and you counsel a student not to go into STEM, why are you counseling the student not to go into STEM? Is it actually because they've shown that they don't like it, or is it because you think as women they won't enjoy it? If you're a guy in some coding class or perhaps at work and you have female coworkers, is there a reason that you never ask them questions when you run into a hurdle? We need to bring these things to the forefront of our attention so that we don't have this unconscious hidden bias that creates a negative atmosphere. Next, I want STEM education, especially in computer science, to be more gender neutral, putting that in quotes. I think you'll see what I mean when I give this example. So I was very into Lego robotics as a child. And so one of the kits is called the Lego Ev3. And I don't know who's seen this, but the design looks like it's targeted toward boys. There were some, in the kit, there were some blades and the color scheme, all of that. It looks like it's targeted toward boys. And why would that be? Do mechanical parts have a gender? Do algorithms have a gender? Well, no. But like I said, I told the story of my friend who was told that Lego robotics was for boys. So we need to at least have some opportunities that are either gender neutral or like perhaps targeted towards girls in a way, but make sure you actually include girls in that. You don't want to just be targeting things towards a stereotype of girls, you know? And then third, I think it's great for the culture to have women and girls be leading these STEM initiatives, especially in areas of STEM with less female involvement, like computer science. I have an example. I started the first computer science club at my high school. And initially, when we had the signups, more girls signed up than boys. More girls. And I think a large part of that has to do with the fact that the club president and founder was a girl. So they knew they would be welcome. And also, the club was targeted toward beginners, people who had little experience. And we talk about the lack of computing opportunities for girls already. So yeah, things being led by women and things being open to beginners, I think will help bring more people in.
That was great. Thank you, Juliana. We will have Anya next.
Yeah, kind of what Juliana was saying. I think it's very important to like start the discussion about biases, especially as I mentioned before, with like the stigma for asking for help. Because I think that is a big part of it, where a lot of people they'll take a more challenging STEM class and they'll think they're the only ones struggling, and they'll think it's, you know, they're just not cut out for it, when really everyone's struggling. And I found that a lot of my favorite classes in STEM have been classes where like everyone will walk out of the classroom out of a hard test and just be like, that was a really hard test. Like I struggled with that. I studied and I still struggled. And then when everyone's talking about how they struggle, it isn't that big of a deal anymore, because you know you can ask for help because other people are in the same situation. And I think that's very important in starting to reduce the imbalanced ratio, to get like this conversation going in classes where the ratio isn't as balanced. It's a little more difficult, I think, especially like perhaps for a minority student to start that conversation. But I feel like if the environment was less tense and the expectations were kind of not, you don't have to be the best in the class. You can struggle and still succeed. I think that would be a very positive environment. And also kind of what Juliana was saying about opportunities for like women to be leaders and like minorities to be leaders and start groups so other people. I think that's also very important. My school actually did an alumni series where like they took alumni from STEM fields and brought them in to talk to us. And it's very encouraging to see like, oh, someone from my high school is a woman working in Google. And, you know, like you don't really think about people from your school going on to have careers and stuff. Like, you know, they go to college for it or whatever, but I guess you don't visualize them as having a career. And now like when I think of an engineer at Google, I think of her instead of like a man, I guess. So it's nice to kind of reduce, I guess, like the inherent bias you have, and also be exposed to having minorities leading STEM. Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. Yeah, I think this question, yeah, let's have Cypria. Yeah, I see her hand there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add really quickly, I think representation is also a really key component of kind of the encouragement that's shown towards really getting minorities interested in STEM, and really in really kind of vying for, I guess, participation and involvement. I think with representation, there isn't a whole lot of representation in the media and that kind of thing. And also, I think for minorities in STEM, we can't really necessarily picture ourselves having a career in STEM because we don't necessarily see that today, or as much. And so I think opportunities like Anya was saying, to kind of really see people that are in STEM professions and or kind of at the level that we're at, I think that's a really key component to getting more minorities to participate in STEM. And I think another component of that also is providing more opportunities at the lower level as well to kind of really get people interested in STEM. And I think that also kind of contributes to Noemi's point about kind of in elementary schools really making sure that that fundamental baseline of education is really integrated within the community, and that we can really provide a supportive community and also a really fundamental kind of I guess educational and academic community as well, and really kind of integrate the two.
Thank you, Cypria. Let's have Noemi. Yeah.
So someone commented about they were worried about the commodification of STEM, and I just wanted to speak to that a little bit. I don't think that that's an issue, and the reason I say that is because, like, whether or not you think STEM is hard, STEM is a lot of work. If you don't like STEM, you might start in it because someone encourages you to, because your parents tell you to, but I don't think there are that many people who like start out with STEM, realize they don't like it, and then keep going all the way through to get like a PhD and go on to research, because it's not like, it's something you can only keep doing if you really, really like it. The reason that I think it's important to show STEM to everyone, regardless of whether they go into it or not, is because of how important the ability to think computationally is. Us, just as people, regardless of what career you're going into, it's ridiculously important to be able to think computationally, I think, because it helps you with every decision in life. It helps you be a happier person, I think, if you can think logically through things. It's I think just as humans, it's something that we should be exposed to. It's our right to be exposed to STEM. And that's just, I feel like, not the case for a lot of people. And I'm not criticizing whoever commented that. I think that is that could be a valid concern, but I don't think it's something that actually could happen, because even if STEM was commodified, I don't think that many people, except the people who really like it, would go through all of the way. If any of you guys disagree with me, please feel free to tell me. But that's just the way I feel about it, and I think everyone should be exposed to STEM.
Let's have Cypria.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And from a STEM perspective, and as someone who's interested in STEM and really wants to pursue that as a career, I think another important factor to getting people more engaged is also kind of having or providing and integrating an outlet for kind of more artistry as well. I was reading kind of an article about how, you know, we really live through curiosity, but we also live for the beauty in life and simplicity and those kind of aesthetic things too as well. And so I think kind of really integrating and providing a clear interconnectivity between the humanities and STEM, I think, is also a really key factor to making sure everyone feels supported, but also kind of, I think STEM is kind of very clearly separated from the humanities, and I think, in some ways, I think that's a good thing, but I think to kind of think logically through things and to have both sets of application, or both sets of skills and apply them to each other, I think is a really good skill to have. And I think that's kind of what helps us as humanity and as a community really kind of progress. And I think that's really important.
Okay. Yeah, I would really like to thank Noemi and Supriya for taking this up, and thank you for addressing the comment. It's really necessary that we just look at it critically. Yeah, with that, I think we're at the end of this live stream. This was definitely one of the most like engaging live streams we've had in this series, and I'm so glad you guys contributed so actively, like genuinely. I would again like to thank Supriya, Noemi, Juliana, and Anya for joining us today and talking about their experiences of being a female in STEM and their perspectives and viewpoints. I would also like to thank our audience for joining us, and we hope to see you in our future episode next week. Yeah.